Welcome everyone, Flying Doctor here. Welcome if you are new to the channel. Welcome if you're returning. Thank you if you have subscribed. Please do like us if you like what you see. Ding the bell so that you know when I've produced my latest content. And yes, I really value those of you who have subscribed. It's always helpful in terms of me building the channel. Now, 10 more new hacks to take your sim experience in Microsoft Flight Simulator's career mode even further. This is an addition to my original video of 20 time saving tips. Some of these are fresh insights. I may well refine what I have said before, so hang on. Don't just switch away if you're thinking, oh, well, this is just, more of the same. These are the kind of discoveries you can only get if you spent too much time in the virtual cockpit, and trust me, I'm learning just as much as anyone else. Don't forget as well that the channel is about us sharing together, so if you see a hint or a tip that could be refined, let me know in the comments section. Welcome to the Flying Doctor channel. Let's geek into it. So you know what we're getting into. I have put timestamps in the descriptions as usual, but here we go. These are the 10 that we're looking at. 1, I'm honest, Taildraggers didn't work for me, but I was able to stick to the aircraft that I did feel comfortable in and had no problem progressing in the early phases of career mode. Secondly, Microsoft Flight Simulator is rubbish at giving you correct altitudes to get through some of the missions. I'm going to show you how you can make sure that you fix a correct altitude using an app called Little Navmap. You can also use SimBrief, but Little Navmap has its advantages. We're going to talk about the need to taxi carefully, especially if you're taxiing at an increased sim rate. Don't do what I did and manage to steer your plane into the trees twice. Anyway, I show what an alternative camera view would look like, focusing in on your taxiing speed. It's really easy, but it's just so surprising what a difference it makes. I'm going to go a little bit further into how you can use the ATC dialog box to bypass mission steps if the mission steps you're given you just can't complete because you're pressing return and it's not registering at all. We're going to look and remember, just stop for a moment and remember the advantages of slow sim rate to slow you right down, particularly for tricky maneuvers. And I also model that later on. Another risk of high sim rate with Autopilot is if you get that fluctuation whilst the sim is working its backside off to try and process anything. I think that's putting some instability into the sim in the first place, but also if the aircraft is bouncing up and down, you'll find that your autopilot disengages, and at high sim rate that means that you're going to hit the ground really quick. So just a little warning there. Number 8 on my list out of 10 is I do show you how you can fast travel, something I've missed off before. It's a really simple way. It's at a premium, you have to pay credits to do it, but you can open up new mission areas by fast traveling. Insurance is a major area. I surprisingly was quite glad that I paid insurance, but when you look at it, it really does mount up, and the evidence is it isn't always working for every aircraft, so watch out for that. And then finally, I've taken a good look at the skydiving missions. Now, some folks were saying that they were able to make quick credits using skydiving by taking off, just skipping the ascent and letting people jump out the plane and then getting down to ground as quick as possible. Jury's still out on that one, but I had some good fun playing around. And I'm thinking that the cargo missions are producing the best yield, especially with sim rate. But you let me know in the comments section. Anyway, it's a good example of how you can use skipping sections to try and get that balance of making the most credit and the best use of your time in the sim. Anyway, stick around as I unpack those hacks, demonstrating how they can save you time, credits, and maybe even a virtual insurance headache. Okay, so for number 1, Taildraggers. Taildraggers meaning the aircraft sits low on its backside with a little tail wheel there. I have found that whilst I can fly these in free flight mode without any problems, I've come across major problems in career mode, despite the fact that this is my highest endorsement rating. I got an A for this. I have found that in career mode, tail draggers are twitchy, topple over easily, even on takeoff and landing them. Well, I think I've managed 2 successful landings so far, if you even call this a success. Look at how I'm wresting that and straight off the runway. Just hasn't worked for me. And the irony is that the icons with the boxes are cargo missions. 8 out of 10 of those are in that airplane we just saw, the DHC-2. Only 2 are in my favourite plane, the C-172 Skyhawk. I would like to see that sorted, and it's tail draggers in general. I mean, the Draco and the Cub are others that are popular, but the DHC-2 seems to be getting a lot of focus. In terms of troubleshooting, I've gone into the control bindings and looked under rudder. There's a lot here, but I think much of this is locked off in career mode. I suspect that's why free flight is working easier for me, although I did get that A in the initial certification. That said, sticking to what I felt confident in didn't seem to hamper my progress at all in career mode. Number 2, let's talk about altitude. Here I am, I'm set up for a mission in the UK. I've called up the EFB beforehand, the electronic flight bag, and you can see at the top here I've got cruise altitude 10,000 feet, or the flight level, which would correspond to that, which is 100. First thing I want to say is that I have never had a flight in a Cessna or even a jet, a light jet, that has taken me to 10,000 feet. And the cruise altitude here seems unrelated to what the air traffic control requested me. All I'll get on every flight, VFR or IFR, is an immediate first height to attain, and then there'll be invariably a turn, because that first height will be along the bearing of the runway. And occasionally in IFR I will receive reminders that I need to adjust my height to a certain altitude, but it doesn't seem to relate to this figure at all. Neither, if I switch to the VFR map, is there any indication. For example, if I click on this waypoint here, and you can see that it would appear that my flight here would go in a westerly direction and then turn. But if I click on this marker here, there is nothing to indicate. Even under more information, it just brings me back to that page. There's nothing to indicate what altitude I am going to be at. That's evidenced further in the navigation log here, which is the 5th button down. You can see there's the waypoints. I've got the heading, I've got the distance. I haven't got an altitude there at all. And under the map settings, you can see I've got 3 options: default, terrain, highlight and satellite. I think this is a work in progress, like other aspects of the sim. What's interesting to me is that some areas are clearly greyed out, and one of them happens to be terrain highlight. So even though terrain highlight is suggested here as an option, it's not functioning down here, which leaves you with the question, how do I make sure that I am flying at the correct height? One of the things that I found really useful is making sure that you fly an altitude that will clear you at a safe height of any obstacles. I say that because once or twice in career mode, I've been directed literally through the mountains or just clipping the top of it. A really good app to use here is Little Navmap. It's a free tool, and I've got a route going here. On the bottom, you can see this diagram. The green is the terrain. The purple line is the absolute minimum, and the red is the safe at the top here, which put me at an altitude of 3,500 feet. I found that this was very helpful indeed. Takes a little bit of a setup, because what you need to do is take the departure and the arrival, and it will do the rest, and it's really quick to set up. In terms of taxiing, yes, I realised we're taxiing down a runway here. It's slightly different. The jury's still out on whether skipping taxiing costs you in the end, in terms of credits, I found the easiest thing to do is to taxi with the sim rate increased. And a second one, whilst we're on taxiing, is one camera view that you may well find helpful is a zoomed in view of that right hand Garmin unit in the C172, which gives you the taxi speed at the top. So I was thinking if there was an extra camera view that I would add, it would actually be of that taxi speed view, because that's the one that seems to be where I get caught out. Okay, adhering to ATC instructions, just to confirm you can see it happening here, I've got mission steps that are inviting me to request taxi clearance, but when I try and do that, I'm not getting any reply. I've therefore moved into the ATC communication dialogue to try and find out what's going on there. Sometimes you get lucky here and you can, there we are, taxi for takeoff options. You can click on something like that and see if that gives you a get out of jail free card, but very often it won't, and you simply have to either think, is this worth carrying on with? Do I abort the mission? You know, which one of those am I going to do? It won't stop you progressing in career mode. I was able to skip here, that you can see, and then I'm trying to request takeoff again, and I think on this particular, yeah, I'm struggling there, you can see. There we are, and that's worked. There's an example of that communication dialog box working. So yeah, sometimes there's a bit of a workaround, understanding you might have to compromise, you don't want to fine, you might lose something for skipping a phase. But yeah, just to underline, this is what this looks like in practice. 6. What I didn't focus on earlier was the power of a reduced sim rate to slow things down and to just make some of those tricky landings easier, and that's indeed what you're seeing happening here. This is very slow, but hey, we're here to learn. I think this next point deserves to be a point in its own, and that is, as well as making the best of slow sim rate, do be careful when using a fast sim rate. Not only can you, yes, enter the problem where if you've got a difficulty in your taxiing, you very quickly end up in a set of trees and unable to maneuver out of that quickly enough. When you are in mid-flight and using a quick sim rate, you may well find that you're expecting a lot of the simulator anyway. You're expecting it to process so much more information much more quickly, which leads to instability. But also under normal conditions, we're flying into a thunderstorm here, but under normal conditions, what you'll find is that if the aircraft is pushed beyond its limits, that the autopilot will disengage. If it disengages and you're at a very quick sim rate, you're going to struggle. So just to illustrate this, you get this kind of bucking that begins to surface that seems like normal behavior for the sim. I'm just increasing the sim rate here slowly. And you see that's just 1 notch up on the sim rate. This is 2 notches up. This is 3 notches up. And this is 4 notches up. And we're asking a heck of amount of the sim right now. So I'm finding that a sim rate when things are calm of no more than 3 presses on the increased sim rate is what you really want to be looking for. But just do keep an eye out, because within any autopilot setting, if the aircraft is being pushed beyond its capability, the autopilot will give a signal that it's off limits and will expect you to be taking over. If you're flying in a very fast sim rate, you're going to have to recover things really quickly, and it's questionable, especially if you're close to the ground, how effective you'll be able to do that. For my next point, if you didn't know this as an employee, in other words, in the early part of the career phase, you certainly will know it as a freelancer with your own company. And that is, when you look at the globe, you'll see areas that are unlit and unavailable for missions. There is a way to open this up at a fee, and that is you need to zoom right in. And in this case, for example, I found a heliport. If I click on that, I get a fast travel option, and I pay a certain premium, 21,440 credits here. My understanding is I'm not going to do it because my insurance, which is my next point, is eating away at my credits here. I can't afford that. But the point is that if you click on this, then it will open up other missions in this area. The next point I would raise, which comes at the moment where you form a company, and you can buy a second-hand aircraft at a reduced price, to much reduced price, is it's taken me some time to acclimatise with how actually the maintenance schedule and the insurance works for the aircraft. I think that there's an issue around the insurances. The first thing is, if I go to manage aircraft here and I click on insurance, the first mistake I made was I thought, well, I want to be really conservative here. I'm going to go with a premium insurance, which did help me whilst I was active in the sim, because I managed to crash the plane twice. So it did kind of pay out, but you're billed every 24 hours. Now, that's not 24 hours of flight time. That's every 24 hours. And I've suddenly found, if you look to the top here, 5860, that I've reached a point that is unsustainable. Well, I should be able to transport myself, in fairness, elsewhere for one more mission. But I got caught out with this. On the one hand, I could have totally wrecked my plane. My advice is, if you're taxiing and you're doing it with sim rate increase, don't just get distracted watching YouTube videos or checking your phone or whatever, because if you're heading towards a set of trees, it's very easy. You've got to react very quickly to pull it out. The good thing about the career mode is that I'm having to pay a significant amount of attention to the sim. Distractions cost you. But yeah, I was finding I was getting billed 13,500 credits, and that has really stung me. Looking at one or two other simmers out there, I'm not sure that this insurance kind of malarkey is working. I've reduced it right down to basic insurance. I'm going to have to be really, really careful. Also, I'm not quite sure and confident where it comes to passive income. So I think the idea with passive income is that if you've got a second aircraft, you switch that to crew on whilst you're flying, the AI flies. But lots of questions around whether that passive income stream is fair and above board and working. My final point is really an exploration. I'd heard it said on the forums that quick skydive missions were proving enjoyable and an effective way to make credits fast. And I looked at this and I'm quite surprised at the difference, to the point where I'm thinking, I don't think that the rewards that are laid out in the simulator at the moment in career mode are equitable, really. I'm not convinced about it in terms of the technical challenges around the mission. I've never had a mission more than 2 stars. Most of them have been 1 star at the moment. And also, I'm not really sure about the variance between the different aircraft and the capacity to carry more cargo, for example. But suffice to say, one suggestion was that skydiving could well appeal, especially if you complete the taxi and then jump right up to the cruise height that you can see here. And then once you've let the jumpers go, you just barrel away and drop down as quick as you can. Break every rule in the book apart from the ones that you really need to keep. So there are all those way markers there. I'm just on a circular descent as fast as I can go, pushing the aircraft to its limits, but not up to the max. To be fair, I did find that quite difficult. Don't worry, we're on double sim rate here. The rewards were questionable. Firstly, yes, it wasn't the greatest flight, this one, and I managed to get down in one piece. However, I found that there were a lot of errors in the skydive missions, particularly around, for example, taxiway incursions trying to get to the hold short position, and some really niggly stuff with air traffic control. So the mission that I'd intended to fly was due to yield me 1,280 credits, but you can see here I've got 900 credits. It took me 10 minutes, so that is 90 credits per minute. I think the rewards are just already looking really poor. The reputation update, well, I must admit, it wasn't the best use of the aircraft, but also the levels. Look at that. There's just nothing going on that at all. In contrast to that, thinking about how many credits can I get per minute, I moved on to a light cargo mission that was supposed to be 3 hours long without any increase in sim rate, and should have netted me 8,180 credits. Now, I didn't muck about with this. I just did and worked at my own pace as I usually would. There's me just checking out that the altitude is right. I was conservative in how I was using the sim rate. You can see things rocking away here. But nonetheless, I was sensible, in other words, and the results really surprised me. It is also worth mentioning that I had some problems in the flight with the ATC as well. You can see, well, with the mission steps not giving me enough information or allowing me to reply, I'm using the ATC window as I illustrated earlier. But nonetheless, I managed to accrue a considerable number of credits via this route. Admittedly, it was a better landing, but there was some performance issues here. But most importantly, overall, I managed to accrue 12,830 credits, and in addition to that, a significant increase in reputation. So I did the calculation there. That is 640 credits per minute, because that same flight took me 20 minutes. I can tell how long it's taking because I'm video recording them all. So a 10-minute skydive flight gives me 150 credits per minute, and a 20-minute all on, yes, totally immersed cruise flight with the sim rate increase, just a light cargo mission, nets me 640 credits a minute. That's a no-brainer, really. So there you go. I hope you liked what you saw. Thank you for viewing. Please do subscribe. It's really important as I keep the channel going. Take care and stay safe. Hope you enjoyed that additional 10 hints for Microsoft Flight Simulator Career Mode.